going crazy right now, slapping the face, this and that, all the rest of that. But in a move that was unexpected, not thought of, not in the least bit or whatever the case may be. A lot of details coming out about David Stone, some personal stuff on his side with family, all the rest of that stuff. We're not here necessarily to judge. What is that thing that's going around now? We listen, but we don't judge. So let's try our hardest right now to be grown-ups about this and be adults. I mean, this is a 19-year-old kid at the end of the day, but there are some realizations that we need to all come to with this as far as what's going on. So we're not going to bore you with, oh, he entered a portal and all the rest of that stuff. What does this mean? What now? What's going on? Let's try to get to the bottom of this. Jason, I'll give you the word, but I'm going to give Chris Mason the word. So it'll be you next after Chris Mason. Chris Mason, why did this happen? What made this come on? Like, what made this come about?
Well, I hinted pretty heavily on our last show on Thursday that OU was reassessing resetting folks' NIL deals. There was negotiation going on, that Nagy was trying to right-size the roster, budget, and all that. So I gave you guys kind of a hint that I'd heard stuff was going on. I didn't have the specifics on this. I'm not going to puff myself up and say, oh, I knew this was happening. No. So the let's just say the internet rumor world is narrowing down to basically one story. Okay. David Stone's freshman year number got changed to a new number. Okay. A drop. Now, the numbers being thrown around are something like there was a 50% drop and that David Stone was making somewhere around $800,000, $900,000 as a freshman. So you guys can do the math. And that this was based upon that OU was trying to right-size stuff and get folks in better deals per production. And most of this work has occurred in the January time frame, right? When R. Mason Thomas said he was coming back, he got a new deal. Robert Spears Jennings said he was coming back, he got a new deal. Kip Lewis, same thing. Grayson Halton, all those guys that we heard were coming back, right? That OU was getting back, all got kind of new deals based upon their starter production as from their 24 season. So David Stone obviously didn't have a big freshman year. Jaden Jackson played a lot more snaps, was more productive. David was hurt. He had that sort of wrist club thing, which didn't help him the last half of the season. So OU, based upon their budget and whatever, and I don't know the big number, I don't have that Excel spreadsheet in front of me, made this decision. And it looked like, for the most part, that was okay. That was fine. They explained the number. They explained what was going on. I believe they explained that, look, this is your base, but if you perform at a certain level, we're going to take care of you, right? That we'll readjust your NIL deal right at, as soon as you produce, we'll redo your NIL deal and you'll be good to go. And that's why David had a big spring, got in great shape. And then something in the last 10 days, 15 days appears to have fallen apart. Now, I don't know what that was. I can speculate. We could try and avoid that, whatever you want to do, Chris and Jason. But those are the fundamental pictures of the deal. And it sounds like David had a meeting with OU and said he was going in the portal. Based upon the way David acted this spring, I'm having a hard time imagining this is on the field related or playing related or anything like that, because he was starting all spring and he was playing great. And he and Todd Bates have a very close relationship. David had a bunch of interviews this spring talking about who he was, where he was doing, and he sounded super positive about the direction he was going with the Sooners. So this isn't, everyone was asking, is Jaden Gibson going in the portal? And I think most of us just don't know, because no one's seen Jaden Gibson and haven't talked to him, doesn't have an interview with him. We don't know where he is in his rehab. But that's not the case with David Stone, right? He was he was up front talking to the media at practice all the time. So something's gone off the rails in the last 2 weeks, and that's currently where we are.
Can I let me jump in here with the let's see, got a super chat. Obviously, Benji, shout out to our Texas brethren out there. Sup, fellas? Think Stone has a path of return. Just have to get your fan base to quit condemning him. Horns down, fellas. So our friend Jason Watkins, he says there may be a path for him to come back now. Everyone pump the brakes. So Jason, what are your thoughts about the whole thing?
Yeah, I think couple of things. First off, I do think that there's probably a path here, and the reason for it being the fact that, you know, we've heard of a couple of other guys that have had their NIL cut, right, based on their production or their lack of being able to adjust to college life. Let's put it that way. You know, we're talking about obviously Eugene Brooks. We know he left in the first portal, right? Because he got his, reportedly had gotten his NIL cut because he never really was on the field. He was on the practice field. It didn't sound like he was getting it done the way he was supposed to. He came in as a top 100 guy. They'd given him quite a bit of money. He didn't really live up to that.
He ate his way out of town.
That too. Same thing. We just saw this with Mitchell a couple of weeks ago. Before they removed him from the team altogether, same kind of deal. They had cut his NIL way down as well. Him coming in as another top 100 guy, 5-star potential type of guy, right? That's not the case with Stoney, though. I think that what we're hearing, and put all that stuff from, you know, Brandon Drum aside and all that other shit, whatever's going on with his family, that's his problem. But it hasn't been a problem on the field. Yes, he had an injury or whatever, but towards the end of the year, he was starting to come back. We know he played 94 snaps or somewhere in that area for the entire season, but it wasn't like he was never there, wasn't playing, wasn't practicing, wasn't progressing to become a better player. And in view of the fact that that's the case, my only question and my only issue with this would be, listen, I'm all in on what Jim Nagy's doing. I'm all in on it, right? I think we're all in on it. But I think that we're in a time of transition here. This is a time of transition in college football all the way around. So you're in a time of transition where, yes, things were done differently a year ago. And in the 2024 class, it was done differently than it is now. And when you bring him in, and whatever the number is that they brought him in, if it's 800,000 or if it's 9, I don't know what it is. Whatever the number is, if they chop that in half, that to me feels like you're saying you're punishing them, right? For not being Tommy Harris? That's what we're punishing. It feels like you're kind of punishing him for that. Whenever he is progressing, he's not getting his ass in trouble, any of that other kind of stuff. You want to kind of see him, I don't want it to feel that way. And if he's feeling that way, then that's kind of one of those things where, to me, I could see that now if they are having this meeting this afternoon or something like that. I don't know what's going on exactly, but if they're having this meeting and they're having this talk, I think this is where I think you can make the rest of the football team understand this. And it's not going to turn it into, okay, well, now everybody can just start looking for more money.
Yeah. And Jason, if I could just jump in right there. So Robert, he has a really good comment here. Production versus potential versus projection. And I think that definitely piggybacks off of where you're getting at. Now, what I would say is,
again, because I look at this as he was a 5-star plus, which means that every recruiting service had him as a 5-star, right?
And I get that, but the thing is that you still have to go out there and produce. When we say pay for
freshman, okay, Chris, that's not. I'm telling you that I feel like there's got to be a gray area in this situation because of the fact that we are in this transition. I don't care if you agree with me. I'm telling you what I feel about it. You can come back at this, but let me finish what I'm saying.
Go ahead.
I think that there is a gray area here because of the fact that, look, you could call it production. Yes, he only had 1 sack. He wasn't in the, it is what it is. But in the end, there's a difference in a guy that's a project kid and a guy that we know has the ability to turn into something bigger than that. Gerald McCoy is telling us all that stuff. He's still right behind him on it. Now, do I think that you have to get him all the way back to what it was? Not necessarily. What I do think you need to try to do is come to some kind of if it's possible, I think that you need to work on this a little bit and find a way to keep him in the fold, because I think it's worth it to do so.
I think
so. Go ahead. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna say this right here. Now, Jason, I get everything you're saying, but when the process you're describing with all of that, save that for the NBA draft. They draft off potential. This is production.
I don't agree with that. I think you give somebody a contract based on what you expect them to do moving forward, not what they did before, what you expect them to do moving forward.
That's what happened. And if that's the case where it got reduced, that's what happened. Because with all these NFL guys coming in here and all the rest of that stuff, this is the model that you're going to be you're going to be moving.
So you're telling me they don't have him as a 5-star caliber player anymore moving forward? That's what you're saying.
I'm not saying that, but I'm saying you're going to pay year to year for every year for the production that's given. You're going to pay based on that. You're not going to pay
what they do at the general managers in the professionals that you hear it all the time, that they don't want to pay you for what you've done. They want to pay you for what you're going to do. Mm-hmm. So you're telling me that there's no way that it was worth cutting him in half, cutting his, if that's what they did. And I don't know for sure that that's what they did, but if that is what they did, this was the anchor of your recruiting class for that year. He brought together the power line, all that kind of stuff, and none of that matters. And you really don't believe that he's going to be that guy moving forward, because I disagree with that.
My whole thing is simply this right here. When we talk about potential versus production, this and that, he's got to prove it. He's in a prove-it year. This is going to be a prove-it year for him. I promise you that. With Nagy in, and what I'm saying, Jason, is this right here. These NFL guys in here are changing the culture of college football. Yes, you want NIL.
And I'm all in on that. I just said I was all in on that.
But what I'm trying to say, if I can actually finish, is that the NFL guys are coming in here and they're saying, that's great that you want these millions and this and that. And some of these college coaches are standing steadfast on that hill as well, as far as saying, go look for greener pastures, simply because the production doesn't match the price tag. Right now, yes, you could pay that kid, you could do all the rest of those things, but with the problems and all the internal stuff, is this just going to continue to happen? That's the whole thing. This is a kid that has a high ceiling, high potential, all the rest of these things. To me, I thought going into the season that he was going, you could pencil him in probably as a starter, Jaden Jackson as a starter, Dominique Williams behind him, G Baby, and then probably Marcus Strong or Trent Wilson kind of round it out, or if you went into the portal. So that's kind of how I thought that lineup would go there. But it's one of those things where if they cut the kid or whatever, all I'm saying is, yes, I agree with you in a sense, but I'm just saying, I think the reality of the situation is that Nagy is coming in here saying, hey, yes, NIL is a real thing. You guys demand what you want, but here's the reality, and this is what's happening in the NFL. I come from the Patriots, to where we had guys that were X-time Pro Bowlers and this and that, and guess what? We cut their ass. Guess what? The best quarterback to probably ever play the game, Tom Brady, we had him restructure his contract several times. So I think they're coming in here with that attitude, and they're basically trying to say, this is the reality of the situation. This is what we're trying to do. Can they pay him more? Can they meet halfway and get him there? I'm hopeful they can do. I lean more towards your side. That's what I want. I just think that on the reality of things, I think that's where college football is at now. I think that these NIL is so out of hand, and in a lot of good ways.
I agree with that. I agree with that part of it too. I'm that's not what I'm saying, Chris. I'm not saying that. And to answer the question, no, this is not a Nico situation. He's not trying to hold anybody hostage. You know, if there is any of that kind, I mean, if there's some situation going on with what's happening with his family or whatever, and he's spending money on them, is what Brandon was saying, whatever. But that's not what this is. That it's not Nico. You know, he loves Oklahoma. He's not trying. I don't think that he wanted to leave. I think that I think that there's some bad feelings there that he felt like he got cut in half whenever it wasn't like he was not performing at all. You know what I mean? And I think he was coming on. Look, we've heard about him putting on the weight. We've heard about a lot of this stuff. That's where I feel like there is probably a path. If they're having a conversation here, I think that, and this is all I'm saying, because I'm completely with you on, I don't give a shit about the recruiting services or how many stars they had or any of that kind of stuff. Don't care.
Yeah.
You know, I do care about production, but I would also pump the brakes a little bit that, hey, there's guys here that we know that they're good. We know that Brent and his staff before Nagy got here knew how to identify talent, right? This guy's a talented guy. It took a lot to get him here. I think that and again, depth-wise even, I know that you can go out to the portal and get these guys from the lower levels. I don't think that that's the same as David Stone. So I think there's a little carryover from what it's been. And I think, yes, moving forward, it's going to be what it is. And I would agree with that. But I think that it's a little early to pull the plug that drastically if it is what it is. I don't know. I could be wrong on it. And I mean, whatever ends up happening. I think that they're still going to be very good on the D-line and everywhere else. I still think they would be better with him.
I think what I would have liked to have seen, so let's be clear. To the best of my knowledge, these numbers were all given to the kids in January, right? No one seems to be disputing that, right? So what I would have liked to have seen is Nagy, who's at practice, who is watching. I mean, he's at every practice. That's what I heard him say in interviews, several interviews, right? I would have liked him to pull David Stone aside and said, look, you've had a fantastic spring. We want to reward that. We want to bump up your number. We want to bump up your number because based upon the way you've been performing, the way you look, we think you're going to have a huge year. So we want to reward what you've done and incent you to stay and do this. That's what I would have preferred, because let's be honest, the real problem is the big deal he got as a freshman, right? That's the problem. We don't have any constraints, guardrails from stopping those ridiculous deals from happening, right? That's the first problem. It's not like the deal got cut in half. It's that his deal should have been explained to him in a negotiated CBA where half his deal he should have considered to be his freshman signing bonus, right? This is your recruiting signing bonus, right? And then the other half is going to be your base NIL salary moving forward, which we'll reassess based upon your performance. And if that had been explained to him by a real agent with a real NFL GM front office explaining his contract, and OU maybe saying, look, we're going to give you guaranteed money for 2 years, but you can't transfer for 2 years. That's in your contract. These are the things we all know that need to start happening, right? That when a player like David Stone comes in, OU can spend up front, but be guaranteed they've got 3 years to develop him. That after 1 year, he can't, if he does become a superstar, he can't just leave and go somewhere else. You need to be able to develop players. You need to be able to sign them to guaranteed contracts where they can't portal. Now, if OU breaks that contract, then they're free. They're free. And if the player wants to break the contract, they owe you some money. This is the world of, and Chris can explain this better than anybody else. This is the world of contract law, right? This is the way it works. That's not what
we're talking about here.
No. But I'm saying this is what OU. This is where we need to be, right? But where we are currently, OU gave him a bunch of money up front, and cutting it in half doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't make sense. Not for a 5-star development freshman who didn't play as much because he was behind fifth-year senior defensive tackles and veteran defensive tackles. I don't want OU to be in the same position. Let's just say
just because Jaden Jackson excelled upon to a level that nobody has for a long time, then that also kind of
made a mess of things.
Flying off the Stoney a little bit, right?
Yeah, but I don't want to be in a position where, let's say Derek Morris and Sexton have unbelievable years, excellent years where they are the starting tackles. They are healthy. They are veterans. They're locking down our O-line, and our O-line's playing great. Where you're having this same conversation with Michael Fasusi next year because he's not starting. He's not playing. But then next year, in 2026, you want him to be your starting left tackle, right?
Right. Well, what about what Benji just said in there? He's like, could you imagine if they would pull or cut Arches in half because he hasn't played for 2 years or he only played in 2 games? I mean,
I kind of think Arch is a different thing. I mean,
it's not a different thing because we know that to win a national championship, you got to be disgustingly good in the trenches, particularly in that interior of the defensive line in the SEC. We know that.
I think OU needs to accept the fact that they set up. They created this problem. They created this problem with his freshman number, right? And you need to, and Nagy and those guys need to have something in the back of their minds is like, look, we 25% cut, that can make sense, but a 50% cut just doesn't make sense with the problem we create. Now, I don't think Nagy's going to be signing any freshmen for this number moving forward. Like a freshman thinking he's getting this number.
Again, I think this is carryover from last year, not.
Yes, exactly.
I'm not saying that this is going to continue going on.
Yeah,
I think this is a situation where it's
an ugly cleanup going. And you need
to clean this up. I don't think it looks good on you as a program to let your 5-star go in a year.
Well, it doesn't.
I mean,
you're just trying to get. I mean, the big thing for me is big picture. We're just trying to get some freaking momentum going off the field.
Those clown out of here.
Hold on. Let's go through some of the comments real quick. So first and foremost, guys, hit that like button, folks, on all channels. Obviously, all the stuff is there, is down there in the bio. All the rest of those things. You're streaming on this channel. You're streaming on this dude. You're streaming on Jason's channel. So definitely hit that like button, y'all. Robert says, Gerald McCoy took a year to adjust. It is a process. There are no shortcuts. Stone needs to understand that. Let's see down here.
I mean, the first part is he's right. It took Stone. I mean, it took McCoy a year to really get he redshirted too.
It did. Yes, these guys don't just immediately become. More times than not, these dudes don't immediately become Reggie White. For fuck's sake, come on. I mean, I'm just saying, and it's not like we've seen that he's had a bunch of problems or anything like that.
Or Tommy Harris, right? Let's just use it.
Whatever. Tommy Harris is fine, but I'm saying anybody that's just immediately going to come in and they're going to be that guy right away as a true freshman, even if they were at IMG.
Well,
the fact that, and even Jaden Jackson, okay, I get it. Jaden came in and became a starter, and he's a freshman All-American. I love that. That's great, but that doesn't mean that there's no potential moving forward for this. And all we've kept hearing, we have heard nothing bad about David Stone until yesterday.
Well, I don't think we didn't even. I mean, you're correct. He's done everything he needs to do. There's a room for a negotiated compromise here, and I hope Nagy realizes I'm going to take this hit right now for doing this. I'm not going to be in this boat any longer, right? But short term, I need to salvage this situation, especially for recruiting as well, high school recruiting, right? Because maybe it doesn't mean anything, but this will get used against us in trying to close big time kids.
Now this is the only pushback, and Jason, I'm not, you my guy, I'm not trying to go against you, but this is the only pushback that I have. Because a lot of people in the chat or whatever are kind of bouncing off of your comments as far as how they're posturing themselves. People, we haven't went the fullest extent, like some other channels, this and that. If we went the whole 9 yards, I think that opens up another can of worms in this thing, because I don't necessarily believe it's Nagy, it's OU, it's BV that are losing a kid or losing this guy to the portal. There are other factors that and there's stuff that's being said and going on. Like I said, we listen, but we don't judge. We don't know everybody's situation. We're not going to say it's the best situation or whatever for the external. But what I'm saying, there are some other factors in here that you have to factor in. I don't think this is necessarily you losing a kid just by will or a bad situation, or you didn't see his potential or this and that. You thought you were making a good decision. Some reports that we've heard, some things that we said, Chris Mason behind the green screen, there has been this was supposed to be resolved a few months ago or whatever the case may be. Maybe it wasn't explained that well. But if outside factors are factoring into this and making this kid to the point where this kid has to go and basically be, quote unquote, the man of the house or whatever the case may be, that's stuff that's just totally out of left field and out of your control. You can't control that. So I think that,
but that's
one of those things where it's a red herring.
Doesn't even really have to do with this, does it?
That
stuff that you're talking about that's out there or whatever, that's personal for him. I mean, maybe that. Hey, look, if they're saying that they need to get him away from his family, okay. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. There's a super from Coach Ricks. I don't know if you saw that a minute ago.
Let's see. Where is it? I don't see a super from him. Hold on, maybe. No, I'm not.
Yeah, there it is. No one likes to transition into where money is going to be based on performance. $4.99 from Coach Ricks. Appreciate you, Coach Ricks.
Yes, appreciate you, Coach Ricks. If I see it, I'll put it up here. I'm not seeing it on my end, Jason. I'm sorry.
It should be auto-starred for you, but okay. Yeah, that's cool. No, I was just saying, in the end, look, I'm not saying that we have to keep David Stone. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. And whatever that looks like. And if he feels like, look, the other thing is I don't like the attacking David Stone part either on the part of the fan base. No. I think we got to stop doing that shit.
And I think it's just no, you can't do that. And we're all adding to the conversation. And I think this is good. This is a healthy conversation to have about the situation without having to go that the full extent of what the rumors out there are. But I just think it's one of those things where it's just so many different things that are coming into this. Let's see, JT Rose, everyone in the chat is automatically assuming there was a huge pay cut and let go, which is, completely speculative. I kind of got to agree with that too. Not necessarily sure. We're just kind of going off the information.
I don't know how speculative it is, but I agree with what you're saying. Yeah.
I just think that, and hey, that's the question in the chat and for the panel as well. Regardless of how this situation ends, David Stone is here. David Stone is gone. Do you trust Nagy going forward?
To me, yes, because I think what we're seeing is what my wife likes to call a sausage process, right? This is ugly, right? We all want to see the end result. We all want to get to a better place. Nagy's approach is going to work, especially if the House deal goes through and we start getting some sense around all this. So yes, I mean, OU's gambling that we're not going to be stuck in this free-for-all Wild West bullshit for too much longer.
Right.
And I'd rather they're doing that than all of a sudden the House deal comes down and, and players at other places are dumping left and right because checks aren't arriving and other stuff. So I got no problem with the way Nagy's doing this, but to Jason's point, this is an interim process. Nagy's cleaning up. He's applying rigor and process to something which had no rigor to it at all. And moving from that to this is ugly. And it's the sausage process. We all like the sausages, but we don't always like the process, right? Sure. And we're in the middle of this process. The rumors are just grist for the mill, to continue that bad analogy, right? That's all that stuff. This is ugliness. I just hope that I only hope right now that Nagy is talking to Michael Fasusi and Foj and their family and their handlers and saying, this is not going to we're not having this problem next year, right? This is where you are if you play. This is where you're going to be next year. We're projecting your potential because there's a possibility both of those kids don't play. But everybody in college football is going to be freaking tampering as shit to get them. I mean, you can't tell me that some of this hasn't been prompted. This whole David Stone situation has not been prompted. And I'm not going to name names or accuse anybody, but it is naive to believe that no one has reached out to David Stone's family from another school and said, "Are you happy at OU? Because we hear you're having a great spring. Just let us know if something goes bad because we got your back." Naive to presume that that's so that Benji's I'm pretty sure Benji's right on there. Okay. But this naive to presume that there are not external forces manipulating David Stone's family, possibly telling him lies. Hey, we got your back. Leave OU, and we got a bag of money for you.
Dude, Miami was trying their ass off at the end last year.
I wasn't going to throw any shade, but I'm just saying.
I'll throw the shade. Fuck Miami.
But it is naive to presume that folks didn't hear Teddy, Gabe talking about how freaking great David Stone looked this spring on their last podcast, and no one from another school, street agent, booster, isn't perhaps telling them, hey, look, I hear OU structure money. Don't worry. Let's say Coral Gables got your back. We got a beachfront property for your family. Just make your way down and come play for Coach Cristobal. It'll all be good.
Yeah.
And I'm not accusing Miami.
Would never, ever.
I'm not accusing Miami. I'm just hypothetically using it as an example. So I trust what Nagy's doing, regardless of whether David Stone is here or not. Regardless of what David Stone is doing, whatever David Stone's decision, I trust what Nagy's doing. I just realized, and more so than ever, that the next 6 to 8 months are sausage processes, and it's going to get ugly, and players are going to start getting before it was this nice college experience where Brent wants to hug everybody, the soul mission. Guys, that shit's over. If you're not, Brent even said being a nice guy and staying on campus, it just don't work any longer. I mean, Bob kept guys on scholarship because they were good guys who never hit the field at all for 4 years. Because that's what Bob believed in. Those days are all over.
Yeah, they are.
They are. We're in a different scenario, and we really need to. And the last comment, I'll shut up. We really need to get these kids contracts that they are CBA that's connected to a CBA
collective bargaining agreement.
We need to protect these kids from themselves, from agents who aren't agents. We need to get them proper advice, and OU needs to be able to give. If you guys have seen it, the NFL rookie camp and the NBA rookie camps, where a guy says, "Guys, this is your contract. That's not the amount of money you got. You need to subtract this for taxes, this for representation. This is what you have to live on. Don't go buying 5 Bentleys and a $6 million house because it ain't gonna work." So. This is where we need to get something in place to help these kids. Mm-hmm. I mean, the NBA has this stuff, NBA has all this stuff to try and help their 18 and 19-year-old guys. They also have contracts and professional agents. And that's what we need to get to with players like Dave. David Stone needs to have a real freaking agent in his corner negotiating for him.
And that's the thing. So just if I may just have a second just to kind of go on this little bit of a spiel. We're talking about that coming in here about the taxes and all the rest of that stuff. Pretty much what a lot of this is going to boil down to is, how to say this? Does perfect fit outweigh financial literacy, right? Like it's kind of advice. That's the thing. Like, are you going for the perfect fit to get yourself to the long money as far as what the NFL can offer? Or are you financially literate enough to understand that, hey, if I leave Tennessee where I'm gonna make 2.4 mil, that's not gonna stretch the same way that it's in California, right? Because of taxes and all the rest of those things. And I'm not, obviously that's kind of what the Nico situation, that's the word out there, which is actual facts. Somebody needs to tell these, like, I would love to sit down with a tax expert and just figure out like, what are these kids? Are they 1099? Are they W-2? I'm not expecting an 18, 19, 20, maybe not even a 21-year-old kid to understand that. But it's one of those things where you see some of the legislation that has been passed. Governor Stitt, like them, don't care. But I will say he has been pretty proactive as far as NIL is concerned here in this state. And that's one of the things that he tried to do is put more autonomy, more power in the hands of parents. That way they can actually rep their kids in some way. I've been screaming it for the longest. If you're smart, you don't have to go get an agent that's going to take 10%. Get an attorney. Get an attorney. Pay that attorney $1,000, $1,500 retainer. The average NIL deal is most likely less than $5,000. Let's be real. Right. Pay me what you have, not what you're going to make. So pay me what you have right now. Meaning you put $1,000 down. I'm just reviewing contracts, little simple agreements, not really yoking up all that money. I'm just taking money out of there and all the rest of that, right? So you could get 5, 6 contracts, and guess what? I could just read the thing and put them together. You want to negotiate this and that? Well, you negotiate the numbers. I'm looking at the contract, this and that, blah, blah, blah. That's what a lot of these kids could use. It's really inexpensive. But one of the things is it's just the legislation, but that is really kind of the problem now, I think, that a lot of these kids are going to face because and I think one last layer to that is that, obviously perfect fit versus financial literacy, as far as do you understand like the taxes, everything else is coming with this decision of moving from Oklahoma or a New Mexico all the way to Miami, right? Do you understand the taxes and all the rest of that stuff there? What if they start charging these kids with jock taxes?
They're not doing any of this stuff and telling them nothing, though.
That's what I'm saying. So, I mean, it's just one of those things where you have to figure that out. But like a last layer of that is, honestly, just what is the kid's situation currently? Does he have to, is he forced by outside circumstances, maybe in this case, to have to go and do something right now to better his situation here? Because some of these kids, let's just be real, they come in here 5-star tags, 4-star tags, whatever, and some of them don't even make it close to the NFL, hell, even the CFL. So
you remember Marvin Wilson?
Yeah.
The FSU defensive tackle, 5-star out of high school, freshman, sophomore All-American, and he blows his knee out and he's not in the NFL. I mean, that's what I worry about in this story. Is something like that, something like those cautionary tales, right? That
sure.
His family, it all looks good right now. He looks good right now. He's young, but there's a negative. There's no guarantees here. None of this stuff is guaranteed.
None of it is. And I think, again, I think if it was a situation where you were having issues with the guy himself and he wasn't playing well and we weren't seeing we hadn't heard anything about any kind of development along the way, then it would be one thing. But I think that, sooner
he had the best. Yeah, he had the best spring of any young player on the program.
Yeah. Again, see, so that's what I'm saying. If that's what we're hearing, then why is it? I think that you have to, I love that you have a plan moving forward, but we've gone from, and I don't know that it's Nagy. I don't know who it is. I don't know how this is all going down, but I think that there's got to be some kind of a little bit of a balance on how you clean this up. Moving forward, fine. Yes, you're going to stick with your NFL model. We'll give it to you now. You have to show us that you deserve that money next year, right?
And the thing about it is, and one last thing, if I can add this to the conversation, y'all, biggest thing for people, you gotta get out there now, because when that house settlement and all the rest of that stuff comes, there's gonna be some stark realities on this. There's not necessarily gonna be a cap, but it's gonna be some realities. I mean, because a lot of
as far as the rev share, sure, but I think that that's when you're gonna start seeing more cheating and a lot of that other stuff. I don't know exactly how it's gonna go. I get what you're saying.
Honestly,
yeah.
In hindsight,
there's going to be somebody that's going to pay the hell out of this kid right now, and he is going to turn into a star because he is a star. I mean, come on.
And be honest with you, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't look at anything the NCAA was doing except for just what the revenue share was going to be for OU, what the projections were going to be. But in hindsight, looking at that episode that we did with the proposal that I came up with, pretty much we were hitting on what the NCAA is pretty much trying to move to. The only thing, and what's crazy is they're doing this whole thing of if you're making more than $600 off of the NIL deal, which would, as we said in that pod, outside funding, right? Sure. Then they're going to try to review it and check. You're not going to get catch everything in the clearinghouse. You're not going to be able to net everything.
The clearinghouse is weird. Yeah, it's in that because you could go the other way with it and not let nothing in. You know what I mean? So I think that's rife for getting challenged often in court. I don't think that's, but I know that there does have to be some kind of guardrails. And I've said this a bunch over the last couple of weeks. I want to say this again. If the NCAA and these universities really wanted to fix the problem in college football, they would.
Well, the problem is the leadership is lacking. You're exactly right, Jason, right?
Correct.
There's it's like if all the SEC teams said, look, we're going to go with the hard caps, any NIL deal over 5,000 before any payouts go, it has to be approved by a special master or something like that, right? There's at least two teams we know and it has to be a unanimous. We know there's at least three programs in the SEC be like, yeah, we're not sure we're interested in that. A&M, Auburn, and Ole Miss. They're not going to sign. They don't want any of this. The only way they have of being relevant is this free-for-all Wild West. So you're right. There's never going to, and then the ACC, all the ACC's like Georgia Tech, Duke, North Carolina, they'd be like, yeah, let's lock this down. And Miami's like, I don't know. We don't like this, it's that's the way it is. Texas Tech in the Big 12 be like, ooh, yeah, we're not so sure we want to lock this down and make everybody equal. So you're right. It's the way it is. But it is hurting college football, though. The stuff that I know a lot of casual fans, and I'll leave off of this last comment. A lot of my casual fans, they're getting pissed off, and they're getting pissed off more and more. This sort of David Stone thing, the Nico things are sort of like, these are sort of where everything. This is the last straw for some of them.
So if
TJ, you don't even know what the hell we're talking about. Obviously, nobody's crying about the NIL. What do you do?
So just to kind of
USC hasn't paid NIL yet. What the fuck are you talking about?
So just to kind of pivot and let's get to kind of the real topic now. Honestly, obviously we talked about that, but to me, this is a real topic. What's next? What are we doing now? Obviously, we saw that they had, I think there's been some talks about the kid from Southeast Missouri State. Obviously, I think the Syracuse kid is in there, but I know that he just dropped his 4 and it didn't look like OU was in there yet. But in the NIL game, they until they sign and they're basically about to be on campus or whatever, like you know how it was. They could any team could swoop in last minute, Texas A&M style, right? So with that being said, Chris Mason, what's next? What's life without Stone looking like if we don't get him back? Where are you turning now?
Well, I think they'll try and lock if they can't get this Stone situation resolved over the weekend, and I would think that if you're going to resolve it, you're going to resolve it pretty quick. They'll try and land the Jalen Stone kid from Southeast Missouri. He had a pretty good freshman year, pretty productive. He's got 3 years to play. It's a pretty decent investment.
He looks pretty good. Yeah,
he looks pretty good. He looks good. He looks athletic. And then maybe you try and get the Syracuse kid on the phone and say, hey, make a trip to Norman, and perhaps you make a deal there. So I think that's a possibility. Marcus Stone had a good spring, right? I'm a big Trent Wilson fan.
I like him too. Yeah.
So as long as I guess I didn't want to go here because I didn't want to go old doom and gloom. I guess my major concern is, what if Jaden Jackson's shoulder's still fucked up in July?
Don't do that. What are you doing?
I know. I didn't want to go there. So
you know what you're doing here? You're making the Sooner Cowboys of the world that I can't kick out of here go crazy in there.
So I would say OU's not going to stand pat. Todd Bates does too good a job recruiting defensive tackles, developing defensive tackles. Year over year, they get better. If I was Jalen Stone and OU was offering me competitive money, I'd be like, sign me up, get me to Norman yesterday, right? I got 3 years to play, and the odds are if I'm a really good athlete at defensive tackle, Todd Bates is going to make me an NFL draft pick. So that's what I would do. Do they try and pick up another kid? I think that depends. Hopefully, like I said, they know where Jaden Jackson is with his rehab, and they're confident that he's going to come back. So I'd like to think that's where they are with that. They certainly seem to be confident Ozetta and Howland are coming back because they're not like freaking out at tackle or guard in the portal. So it looks like, and those guys all had surgery at the same time. But yeah, I mean, I think defensively, Jaden Jackson and Dom are your starters. Grayson Holton and Marcus Strong are probably your backup duo, or I think you have 3 de facto starters, and then you work in Trent Wilson and you work in Trent Wilson and whoever the signee is into the next mix in the 3 to provide depth. That's what goes on. Maybe it's a little more reps for Dom, Jaden, and Grayson Holton. Maybe it's a little more reps for Trent Wilson. Again, I heard he had a really good spring. The guy looks 30. He's extremely serious about what's going on. I don't think I've seen him smile once. And that's where you go. But I think the bigger concern is, Nagy needs to get this all under control. So this is the last one, right? This is the last time we have this discussion and this issue. We're going to lock things down, manage expectations, lock by out. He should be hiring somebody in his front office to mentor and mentor guys about their NIL payments, someone a financial, mentor or something along those lines that can help them with these deals that Nagy can say, I think this is the finding for me coming out of this. Until we can get lockdown contracts, Nagy needs to hire somebody to help the kids and their families manage these NIL deals. From an advisory standpoint. That's it. Chris, if I knew who to tell, I'd get you hired tomorrow.
We ship them contracts out, talk to them, get all the rest of that stuff situated. But no, I agree with you. I think that's just an important piece of this conversation is kind of what's next, because there are quality guys out there that you can go get to kind of plug that hole. Obviously, you were expecting maybe he emerges
the baseline of the D hasn't changed.
Yeah.
But the upside has taken a hit, right?
Yeah.
But now if like PJ or Taylor Wine blow up, then maybe you're able to mediate that, right? Mm-hmm. Or if Dom Williams has a bigger senior year and he's providing more of a pass rush inside and he's better, which he should be, then maybe it mediates all that fact. But David Stone was one of those areas where like the baseline of our D is 8 points out of 10, right?
Yeah.
If David Stone blew up, then all of a sudden that baseline moved to like 8.5, and nobody else really on the roster, other than say maybe PJ or maybe Kendall Daniels having just a absurd year at Cheetah, right? Like an Isaiah Simmons All-American year. That's something else that could move it. But he was one of those guys that could have moved the needle on the defense significantly, right? We have other guys that can do that. Like if Peyton Bowen comes back from his foot injury and plays like he did as a freshman when he was making plays all over the field, right? Like that could be another factor. But David Stone was one of those guys that, based upon spring, we thought, he could move us up to like 8.2, 8.5 with what he's doing, where he's trending. And there's only so many guys on defense that can do that. But Kendall Daniels would be one, Peyton Bowen would be another. PJ or Taylor Wine or Marvin Jones Jr., that combination of defensive ends could do that as well. But you've lost one of those pieces that could take OU's defense from like 8 to 9.
I agree. And that's like I said, and Jason, that kind of comes back, full circle for when we first were talking about this with our discussion. I agree with you, man. I think the kid is a superstar. hopefully you do get this resolved. Hopefully you do come to a number that his family's going to be happy with. But I think there needs to be some stark realities put on this, and I think you're going to start seeing that a heck of a lot more. Because, to be honest with you, I think the timing is just poor for a lot of these kids, and obviously they got to get in where they fit in and all the rest of the stuff. But it's just one of those things where the timing is just really bad on these situations, because it's hard to put a lot of teams unless you just know, because usually you jump in the portal. I think we all kind of lean on the hunch of that kid probably knows where he's going. But man, it's a tough situation to do it right here in the middle, basically at the end of spring, having to jump in saying, hey, okay, well, I'm going to have to go learn this, learn that, do this, do that, all these different things, to the point where by the time you get there, are you really ready mentally, right? It's a lot. I think if we just step away from David Stone, the only thing that I would say bad about the Nico situation is exactly what I just said, is timing. I think the backlash and all the rest of that stuff, it's going to affect. I don't think you can cap and all the rest of that stuff. I backed away from that, Jason. I think you were right on that. But what I will say is that with the House settlement, with what college football is going to, and with a lot of these NFL guys infiltrating, with the Ron Riveras, the Bill Belichick's, Nagy's, stuff like that, you're about to start seeing some realities given to these players. And I think the thing is that it's just one of those things that I think if you ever played sports and you were really good. I remember when I went to my JUCO and all the rest of that stuff, all that all-state shit does not matter anymore. And it's just reality. And I think that some of these players have to realize that, yes, I can demand what I want, but there's going to be certain realities now. And those exit interviews and all the rest of the stuff, because we all know year to year, you're not guaranteed you're going to be there at that school 4 years. Like, you have to have an exit interview with your coach, figure out what you need to do better to get out there on the field, the court, whatever, or be better next year. And you have to sign a letter of intent basically each year. But now you're going to have these real life, they're going to treat you like a professional, because that's what the expectation is.
Sure.
So I think that's something that these kids are going to have to adjust to, because now you have real NFL minds and NFL experience telling you, hey,
this is where you are. This is how this is. Yeah, exactly. And that's why I'm all in on that part of it for sure.
Uh-huh.
I'm all in on that part of it for sure. My thing is that I don't want to see. What I hate about it is that we start attacking these kids, and you're hearing it in here. You're seeing it in the comments even right now, is that you're going after these kids for rules they didn't make. And I'll go back to the Tennessee part we were talking about the other day. They started all this shit when it came to inducements for that and suing the NCAA. They're the ones that put NIL in a whole nother damn place. And now they're bitching because Nico wanted more money. You know what I mean? So the idea that this is all the fault of the athletes, kids, adults, whatever the hell you want to call them, Purple Orca. Either way, kids, adults, the athletes didn't make the rules. They didn't. They're playing.
There are no rules. So
and
that's the same difference. That's the same difference, right?
Right, but it's not. They didn't put it in this position. It was done by the NCAA and the universities and coaches and everybody else. This is what they want. They don't want collective bargaining. That would fix it tomorrow. It would fix it tomorrow, because you have to sign a contract that's, maybe it's more than a year, whatever. Sign the contracts. You know what I mean? If you want to go to this place, we're going to give you this contract for this amount of time. You've got to stick to it. You can't, even if somebody's tampering, you can't go to another school under this contract, because it's collectively bargained that way. It would slow all this shit down. They don't want to do that, because that means that they have to give up more money. They don't want to do that.
The one area where this presents the highlight is, how do you compensate and develop?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Compensate and develop kids, and not get in this And that the way you do it, I mean, it'd be so simple, right? David Stone would sign a 2-year contract with guaranteed money. Oh, you would guarantee it, and they'd be like, "Cool, no worries, done. You can't transfer." And then your junior year, we reassess where you are, right? And I think that makes perfect sense. And if a kid wants out of a contract, then there's a way to break the contract. In the contract, you break a lease, you got to pay your landlord, right? You break a contract with the university. You got to pay. Maybe you're ineligible for spring ball, and you got to pay a certain amount of money back, but you can play next fall, something like that. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. We have a lawyer in here, so if there's ways to work this out. Is it David? I actually feel sorry for David more than anything else. That this is clearly when you take the totality of the comments he's made ever since he verbaled to OU. He wants to be here. He's been working hard to make this work, and it's clear that he's getting caught between OU Nagy trying to fix a mess he inherited, and and the other forces in David Stone's life. And I'm not going to go into all that. That's his business and whatever. And David's caught in the middle. And I feel sorry for him as a 19-year-old kid, knowing how when I was 19, this is not the circumstance I would have ever found myself in. And I can't tell you how I would have handled it. And David appears to be, for the most part, handling it pretty well.
Yeah.
Man.
I think we'll see how it all turns out and whatever. And I just wish the best for the kid. And I'd love to see him end up staying at Oklahoma. And I think that this is one of those times you should probably work this out. But
find a way. Find a negotiated middle ground. Jim Nagy, this is what you're supposed to do. Yeah, negotiate the best results for OU.
Yeah, and I think that you have to be flexible in all. And I mean, don't get it twisted. This is still a damn arms race.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it ain't over until it's over, folks. Trust me, if there's any other news or whatever the case may be, we will, try to be back. We'll try to figure it out when we can get back. Three shows in 1 week for us. Y'all pushing it.
We're giving you a hell of a lot of content, man.
Anything else that we should add? Anything else we need to talk about?
Nope.
No. I regardless of. By the way, we could resolve this tomorrow if David Stone could kick 50-yard field goals, because we could just give him field goal money as well.
That's true.
Because we still need a freaking kicker.
Here's a thought. There's a certain coach on the staff that I think if you cut him, that you could find money. if you were in that boat to get them, if you needed money, which I don't think that's necessarily a problem, but I'll just say, if that was the case, I think there's a coach that I know that we all would be like, hey.
I'm pretty sure David Stone could coach tight ends with Kevin Wilson's help.
I'm just saying, man.
Killing me.
All right, people. With that being said, like I said, it ain't over until it's over. Horns Down Podcast, Sooners 360, and the Hall of Fame College Football Podcast with Jason and the coach. Like, subscribe, follow, do all those different things. We got over 200 people in here. And as always, it's 2:39 in Texas. Still sucks.